New York and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
It's Ebro in the morning. Laura Stiles, Rosenberg. Give it up. Mayor DeBlasio has just stepped in the room.
Bill.
Thank you. Before we get to some lighter topics, I want to deal with the heaviest of topics. Yeah. Eric Garner. Officer Pantaleo was not charged by the federal government yesterday.
Correct.
What are you going to do?
We right now are in the middle of the trial. It will be over next month, period. Done. Final decision from the NYPD. And look, this whole thing, Ebro, has been horrendous from day one. Never should have happened. He should never have. He should be alive. And I've spent time with his family over the years. They've gone through hell. I will tell you, the world has changed in a way I never would have anticipated. We thought that the Justice Department, as it did for decades, was going to be the arbiter. What we found out yesterday is something we've literally never seen in decades, that they just did not take any responsibility
well,
whatsoever.
The current Attorney General's a putz.
Yeah, but
to say the least.
But let's be clear. This has now gone on for 5 years, and I think this is why we announced yesterday we are honestly no longer going to in any way refer to the Justice Department in making our decisions about departmental charges. It used to be that the United States Justice Department was the force for civil rights in this country for decades and decades. And when there was a case, sometimes people wondered about local prosecutors, but they didn't wonder about federal prosecutors' fairness and following civil rights law. We now know we can no longer depend on the federal government at all. We can no longer believe the Justice Department dispenses justice. They just literally didn't even come to a decision for 5 years, up or down. Mm-hmm. And they told us for years and years, do not pursue departmental charges because it would weaken any potential case they might bring. We just don't buy that anymore. So the instruction I've given is that God forbid this happens in the future. And look, let's remember, the number one way we can honor Eric Garner is make sure there's never another incident like this. And we've tried to change so many things about policing to make sure it never, ever happens again.
I disagree. I believe the number one way you can honor Eric Garner is by firing Officer Pantaleo.
The process is going to conclude next month, period. But I want to finish and just say this. In the future, God forbid there is such an incident, we're going to go directly to departmental charges and let that process begin.
Are you going to fire Officer Pantaleo?
Ebro, I'm going to be real with you. There is a law that determines, first, everyone gets due process. You would want it, I would want it, everyone gets it. Second, by state law, that is the police commissioner's decision. I have faith that he is a person who has really worked hard to make this a city that's fair.
But you're his boss.
Again, I'm following the law, and I want to be clear about it. I'm not prejudging. I'm not assuming. There's going to be a decision next month.
Because it's embarrassing and disappointing.
It's painful.
As a person who works with this community and local community is, you know, look, we get along, but I do have an expectation that you're going to fire this officer. I'll be honest with you. And I'll be seriously disappointed if that doesn't happen.
Ebro, I'm not surprised you say it, and I'm trying to be straightforward with you and everyone in New York. We're following the law. We've got to give people due process. There will be a result next month. But I go back to the previous point, and we may have a disagreement on this. He should never have died, and we've got to finish this. But we also have to make sure it never happens again.
Regular people, hardworking people, when they make a mistake at their job, I'm even giving Pantaleo mistake, okay? We lose our jobs, especially if somebody is harmed or died. If police officers, state officials, whomever you are, whatever you do, aren't losing jobs when crimes are committed, whether on purpose or by accident, regular people don't understand. And that's not going to help us become a better, more communicative, trusting community. There's no way around it. I can't even act like there is.
Yeah.
Right? We've watched, like you said, we've watched this play out. We listened to you say, we're going to follow the process. We're going to trust the Department of Justice. Now we're hearing you say, that was a mistake. We should have never done that, and we're not going to do that in the future. All that is cute and cool. Someone is still employed that murdered someone in a chokehold. They need to lose their job.
Ebro, I will tell you something. We have to change the whole approach, the whole system. And that begins with how we police. It begins with the relationship between police and community. And I really believe we're talking about 8.6 million people and making sure it never, ever happens again. We had to retrain the entire police force to de-escalate, so something like this would never happen.
And there have been improvements. I'm cool with all those we talk about that, right? And I could tell by the lack of calls I got from the NYPD officers who are actually working this morning, I actually kind of feel like they stayed off our lines today because they also have an expectation now that, you know what, when something like this goes wrong, you could lose your job. In the Akai Gurley case, didn't those officers end up losing their jobs? There was some indictments brought.
Every case, it depends on each case, but there's supposed to be the action by prosecutors, whatever they decide, and there's supposed to be the action by the department. But I want to emphasize this, and I understand everything you're saying. You and I know each other a long time. You're speaking from the heart, and you're right. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people. The whole thing doesn't make sense. If we could do it all over again, and we're talking about this happened over 2 presidential administrations, 5 years. It's just unfathomable. It's never happened before. And that doesn't take away the pain of the Garner family or the sense of injustice that everyone is feeling. We could do it over again. We would say day one, we're not waiting. We're going ahead with the departmental action.
Is it a borderline impossible task for you, and has it been one of the most difficult things about your administration, trying to take a stand and fight? Because we really thought you did. You know, you put yourself in a hard position with the police earlier in your administration, and it no doubt affected the way certain people have viewed you for the rest of your administration. I think newspapers included. But at the same time, it's very hard to stay in one spot where you're seen as that guy who was for the people and fought against the police, because you also have to work with the police. Do you sort of feel like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't on these issues?
You're right. It's an extraordinarily difficult balance. And I want to separate. It's not the police where the problem has been. I have real differences with the Maine Police Union, which I think has so often stoked division in this city. And what I've found is that rank-and-file police officers want to do their job well. Remember, this is a police force that looks more and more like New York City all the time and is trying hard not only to protect people, they're doing a very good job protecting us, but to change the whole approach, starting from the top. The whole idea of neighborhood policing is to break down the barrier that historically plagued us and get people to know each other, see each other, and train officers to de-escalate, train officers to avoid any kind of bias. Like implicit bias training, which we've been doing now, gets at the heart of everything we've been taught wrong, all of us, in a society that still has to work out its biases. So I think if you look across the whole of New York City, we're a very different place. I agree with you that there are some voices out there that they just want to portray one negative reality. And they will never be comfortable because I did try to change things. They'll always attack it. They'll attack it every day. But we are changing things. And this doesn't, Ebro's point earlier does not in any way, I'm not diminishing it in any way, because there's just too much pain right now. There's too much anger right now to say that doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But I also have to say, I really do believe the job is to make sure it never happens again. And I look at day-to-day policing in New York City, just by getting rid of stop and frisk alone, we took away so many of the flashpoints that could have led to another tragedy. And that's the mission, to save everyone's lives and change that relationship going forward. And I think we can get somewhere.
You said you're following the law with regard to allowing the police commissioner to work it out. Is it more that you're following the rules and allowing that the people who report to you to do their job?
No, it's literally state law that says the police commissioner has to decide in a disciplinary action.
And there's no way that the mayor can empower himself, herself to make these calls? Because here's why I say that. As citizens who are voting, we are in multiple scenarios around the country right now.
Right.
Where you feel like you have zero power. I'm sitting talking to the mayor.
Yep.
The boss.
Yep.
And he's telling me that he has no power and authority over people he has hired. and placed in jobs.
Ebro,
and that is hard for my
I
brain
understand.
to understand.
And look, let me just say it simply as
And
I
is that
can.
do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course. I understand you're saying something I think a lot of people are trying to understand. And in their hearts, they're trying to understand what happens now. Here's why it's so extraordinarily, the whole thing is messed up from day one, right? This should never have happened from the beginning. Justice Department should have done its job. We now know we can't depend on them. We're going to do things differently going forward. I hope we never have a going forward. I hope we never have another one. But I want to come back to this. There is a due process system for everyone.
For sure, and I'm fine
So
with
that piece has to happen. That has always happened.
Listen, everybody, all the smart people, listen, this is the world we live in. All the smart people are playing by the rules, right? You know, all the people who know what's going on and understand the law, we're following the process, we're voting, we're doing everything right. The people who are always breaking the rules, it feels like there has been no accountability. All the way up to the president.
Well, so basically the president can hire people, and those people can't do anything to harm him. But it seems like you're in a situation where you hired people, and they're able to do things that you're not able to control.
But again, why I want to just be honest with you. You can't, my respectful view, none of us can prejudge the outcome. I've said very clearly, it's happening in August. It's going to be based on,
And I understand that's why you're answering, and I also understand that's why you're answering these questions that way, but I have to for the audience and for myself this morning. I could barely do the show because I really don't have an answer for people.
Yeah.
Right? We elected you.
Yep.
You've come on this show, I don't even know, countless times at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And we appreciate that. But with that relationship comes our responsibility to say to you, this is how we feel right now.
Absolutely.
And we need answers. Like, it's not okay. And people are not okay. Like, this is not okay at all. Like, there's no piece of it that our brains go, you know, no. And then the guy that filmed the video has been harassed by cops, Ramsey Order. He's in solitary confinement. He's been in jail. He's the guy that they were harassing him the moment he posted the video. The biggest gang in this city, you know that, DeBlasio, you know what we say? The biggest gang in this city is the police. Because they move in a way that intimidates people, and it's not cool, and it hasn't been cool for a long time. And while you've made progress, stop and frisk and all of that, we get it. But here we are on tape. Somewhere there was a chokehold. Even in 2014, they said Officer Pantaleo broke protocol. Means he broke the rules and someone died. So literally at his job, he broke the rules and there was a death. And you're still employed? Whoa. Where in America does that happen? You understand what I'm saying?
Of course I do. Ebro, I can only say this to you humanly, and you have every right. You're right. Come in here as friends. You should raise everything you feel in your heart, and you're raising it for a lot of people. So I respect that. And we should live in a country where you can have that real dialogue. But I also want to be real. There's everything here was wrong from day one. It doesn't make it any better. There will be a resolution next month. I just
hope it's the right one.
Right, but I'm saying I'm not going to do
saying.
theoreticals about what it's going to be, what it's not going to be, because there is a process. And again, everyone wants their right to go through a fair trial. But there will be an outcome. When the outcome happens, then judge.
I'm going to say this. I'm not sure if you're back on in August after this happens. I don't know what goes on. From this day forward in New York City, anybody that runs for office will be asked. We've had the district attorneys, Queens, up here. We've asked them about the Chanel Lewis case, if that needs to be reopened back up. We've talked to them about Central Park 5. These things, we're getting new information. We're as a community, we're trying to get as much information. Sometimes it's wrong information, but we're trying.
Right.
Anybody that runs for mayor after you're done will be asked, how did you feel about this Eric Garner case and what would you have done?
Right.
And I'm telling you, if the mayors that want to be mayor of this city don't say that Pantaleo should be fired, I guarantee you they won't win.
I hear you.
Because the people, the masses amounts of people in this city feel like this, at least this person should not have a job.
So judge the outcome. But I'm also going to pull it back because we're talking about 8.6 million people. We're talking about trying to make sure it never happens again. I understand everything you're saying. I'm going to keep saying to you as someone I respect deeply. You mentioned Central Park 5. We settled that case. We got rid of stop and frisk. We put body cameras on every officer. We retrained all officers in de-escalation. We do implicit bias training. I know this emotionally does not anywhere touch the core of this tragedy. I know people feel there's a tremendous injustice. But it is my mission to make sure it never happens again. I'll keep saying that every time, everywhere, because there are young people out there in the streets right now. We need to protect them from this happening again. And this is what's so frustrating about everything we're trying to do to change our city, change our country. We can't undo all of the horrifying tragedies, the bias, the historical injustice, the structural racism. We can't undo that and go back in time. We can undo it for the future.
Okay.
We can undo it for the future. And this city's a different city. It is a different city. The way it's policed is different. It needs to change more, but it is different.
Will you be willing to come when we get that decision? Will you come back in and talk about it with us?
Absolutely.
And we can see. We'll know then at least what's happening.
I'll be with you in good times and bad. Whatever happens, either way, I'll be here.
Speaking of bad times, you got crushed on Monday by the local papers for not being here during the blackout.
Yeah, why didn't you go fix the wires, man? Aren't you an electrician? Where was your wrench?
I saw you had a Swiss
Where
Army
was your
knife.
wrench?
We definitely joked about you turning on the switch.
Where was your socket wrench set, man?
If I had brought out my wrench, the blackout would have gone on a lot longer.
So first of all, what does that play out like when you're not here and you find out that's happening? You're out campaigning. Take us through what it was like.
Well, I get a call saying there's a problem, and at first they're trying to figure out how much, how big. Things happen sometimes, they get resolved quickly, sometimes they don't. And the first reports were it was pretty limited, and they thought it could be restored quickly. And I talked to the police commissioner, I talked to the emergency management commissioner, I tried to go through all the paces, eventually talked to the president, Con Ed, what's going on, what are you doing, how long till you fix it? And then at one point it became clear it was not getting fixed fast enough. I got in the car, and the only way to get home was to go to Chicago, which is a 4-hour drive, and then fly back the next morning. That was just a reality. But staying in touch with my folks here all the time, they did the right thing. They set up the command center, FDNY, NYPD. Everyone did what they're supposed to do. There was not a single injury as a result of that blackout.
That's pretty amazing, by the way.
It was over.
Props to
5
us.
hours.
Good job, New York. Not one injury.
Well, New Yorkers
shout
were
to
great.
NYC.
Yeah, we did
New
a good
Yorkers
job.
were great doing it. The Broadway folks who went out and sung in the streets, the New Yorkers who directed traffic.
Unfortunately, we've had a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With everybody coming together when things get scary.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is
Yeah,
great.
we've had too many of those.
Yeah.
We discussed the possibility of more blackouts during the weekend, right? Because there were reports saying that be careful, it could happen. Where do we stand, and are we prepared?
We're doing a press conference a little bit to go over everything with people, but yes, the bottom line is the electrical system can handle whatever we expect this weekend. But that doesn't mean we're going to be complacent about it and assume everything's good, because how on earth did this thing happen last Saturday? It made no sense. It was the first blackout in 13 years, came out of nowhere. They still can't quite explain what happened. So what we have to do is be ready for any eventuality. And, I'm getting everyone in place to be ready for everything. It starts with helping New Yorkers understand it's going to be intense heat, very rare levels of heat. People have to be careful. It's just all the basics, stay in a cool place, hydrate, don't exert yourself, don't go outside too much, all the basics. But then we have to have everything ready. God forbid there's any kind of bigger problem. But this is serious stuff.
Also serious, the election continues on. We expect that 2 weeks from yesterday, there'll be 2 more debates.
2 more debates, yeah.
Let's have full disclosure, though.
Sure.
Yes.
When you decided to run for president.
Yes, sir.
And we like you, we get along. But with everything going on in the city,
Yeah.
and people frying you for homelessness, what we were talking about with Eric Garner, relationship with police unions, closing of Rikers, the battles with the MTA and the subway and fixing of the subway. Like you've had some tough times. I wasn't sure that this was the move for you, and you impressed me at the debate. You had some moments, and I think increased your national profile in doing so. Is that correct?
Look, I can't judge how people saw it. I heard some good reviews. 24 million people saw it. Most important thing was trying to say we had to change things and be blunt about it and talk about where we need to take this country. Which, by the way, I keep saying, if we're going to change New York City, there's a lot of things that can only change in Washington. We can't change them all here. We need a different federal government, a different approach. We need a different healthcare system. We need a government that actually invests in public housing, which is what it was supposed to do to begin with.
That's right.
I mean, think
Oh,
about
yeah, the NYCHA thing was a big deal for you.
but the federal government's been absent as they're supposed to be the number one investor. They've been absent. You talk about homelessness. If we had a federal housing program for affordable housing, we would have a very different reality of homelessness. So I think sometimes people in this city, I don't blame them, particularly the media, is like, well, can't you solve everything here? We can do everything here with what we have here. That's not how we solve everything. The only way we solve it is that the federal government's in the game. It used to be. Federal government used to be a partner in all this. It changed a whole lot of people's lives. We got to get back to that. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like the difference a universal healthcare system would make for New Yorkers is massive. Massive, because there's millions of New Yorkers who either don't have health insurance or don't have enough insurance to take care of their family. So I defend very clearly that if you want to change things, you got to get in the game, you got to fight for the change. And I have now a national platform to do that with. And I believe I could provide a very different kind of leadership. But Ebro, to your underlying point, yeah, this is a very, very tough job. President of the United States is supposed to be the toughest job. A lot of times they called Mayor of New York City second toughest job in America. Isn't that the kind of preparation you should have to take on the challenges of this country and this world? And I would argue there's a lot of good people on those stages, but they've never had to deal with the kind of things I deal with.
You made that
Third
point
toughest
during
job
the
is
debate.
South Bend, actually. South Bend, Indiana.
No, man.
I'm just
kidding.
kidding.
Mayor
I
Pete
actually
right
love.
now.
I
Yo,
actually
don't
love.
try to kiss up to
Oh,
DeBlasio
my
and
God.
son
That's a
Mayor
quote.
Pete
That's a
like
quote.
that.
No. By the way, I love Mayor Pete. He's one of my guys that I definitely am pulling for. I'm just making the joke about South Bend, Indiana. I do think it's one of the things that when people throw out experience,
No, but,
I will say. I'm not saying.
But how about this? Mayor Pete has a problem with the police
I know.
in South Bend with a black man getting killed and race issues there.
Believe me, I know
That he admittedly, like you have admittedly with this Garner thing, not ironed it out and handled it completely and taken control, right? Because I feel like in the Eric Garner tragedy, I want to believe that you can take this by the reins and control it and really get this to the right place. I want to believe that. I really do. And as far as your national profile and those things, I mean, we live in New York City, and that's why people give you a hard time when you're in Idaho and things are going on here, is because we have a lot going on. And I know that you have to think about what you're going to do with your career after this term is up, because this is your second term, and I don't think you're running for mayor of New York City again, are you?
It's not legal.
he couldn't do that.
No, it happened
He's
already.
not Donald Trump. He's
No,
not.
it happened already.
The billionaire
No more.
changed the rules for himself. I believe in the rules.
Wait, so they changed the
terms.
rule one time and then
just for
changed
him, and then the people changed it right back.
Amazing what money
Yeah.
can do.
Yes.
When you
Scary.
pay off everybody,
Ebro,
it's crazy.
Ebro has had a revelation here, everyone. Amazing what money can do. This is a very important moment in the history of this show.
It's the same money that continually makes things difficult for you in this
Yes, sir.
city.
Yes,
It's the
sir.
same money. It's
Yes,
the same
sir.
billionaires who continually try to fry you or propagate stories that, make us think that you have more control than over certain things than you actually do. And also have made the housing crisis such a big problem. Same billionaires.
Yeah, it's a good point. I wonder how many people blame MTA problems on you, that not realizing that a lot of these are state problems.
No, the state runs it.
Yeah, state runs MTA.
But look, we got to also be clear about, even with all that opposition, and it's been endless from day one, things have changed, and that's what I get to. It's like, talk about the changes in policing, you talk about how much affordable housing has been created, talk about the fact we're giving people lawyers for free to stop evictions, never happened before, talk about all these things, 2 years of rent freeze for folks in rent-stabilized housing. You go through all these things. We are changing the city. Pre-K for every kid for free. We're doing it for 3-year-olds next. I know that we live in a situation where there's constant conflict and constant roadblocks put up. But if you're a leader, you're supposed to find a way through that and keep producing for people and changing things for people. I look at 5.5 years of doing this. I do believe it's the second toughest job in America, but I know how much we may be able to change people's lives and create more fairness. There's a lot more to do. But I'll tell you something. If we don't change the discussion in this country, New York City will never get where it's supposed to be. That's just the honest truth. The perfect, we execute everything perfect here, we'll get somewhere better.
But
we
some
won't
of
get
that,
where we need to be.
But a lot of that is relationships between the community and police and politicians.
Yeah.
And holding people accountable
Yes.
for their actions, right? Whether it's corporations that we're holding accountable, whether it's elected officials we're holding accountable. All of us regular folks, when we screw up, there's a penalty. And it happens damn fast, too. Because I know when I go through one of those traffic lights with the little camera on it, that ticket is in my mailbox in 4 days, it feels like. And you guys want your money in 90 days. We want that same kind of action when it comes to police officers and politicians making mistakes.
Or
we don't like waiting 5 years.
Yeah, but Ebro, come on. I hear you. I'm not trying to any way miss the really powerful points you're making, the honest points, and the points I think many, many, many people are feeling. But I wanted you to hear this. There's an underlying problem here. We just have to be honest about it. And I think people are smart. Historically, if we had said we're going to go ahead and act with the personnel charges, remember, what's the maximum penalty when it comes to personnel? You're fired. The federal government was looking at criminal charges. What has been said for the longest time, including by the Justice Department, is if you go ahead, NYPD, and do your departmental charges, you will poison our case. You will make it impossible for us to bring our case. Then what people would legitimately say is, well, if you do that, yeah, you took your personnel action, whatever it was, but you undermined the more important thing. And a lot of folks would have had a right to say that was a bad judgment. That was predicated on the notion the Justice Department was actually going to do its job. We've got to be honest and real, and I really respect the intelligence of New Yorkers. Everyone's feeling a lot of emotion right now, but I also respect their intelligence. We have learned a very painful lesson, and we cannot depend on our Justice Department at this point in history. It's like nothing we've ever seen. So we're going to go it alone from now on. And the only way we won't do that is if the family says to us, no, don't do that, please. We'll respect that. But otherwise, it's exactly the underlying point you're making. We used to believe there was some kind of honest process with the federal government as the guarantor of civil rights and civil liberties, and we don't believe that anymore. And it's painful to say, because I grew up believing in that and seeing evidence of it for decades. Now we're going to do our own thing. But the only thing we can do as a city is the personnel piece. And that's not the thing a lot of people are going to care about most. They're going to care about, shouldn't there be some other kind of reckoning?
Jail time, et cetera, right?
Yeah, and in August, what is happening in August? Because I thought the case was over.
The announcement of if he's fired or not. All right,
the trial, there's been a trial. The judge who has presided over the trial will come to a recommendation. This is all stipulated by law. The recommendation goes to the police commissioner. The police commissioner makes a decision. The police commissioner has not received the recommendation from the judge yet. We believe that will happen next few weeks, and then the commissioner will make his decision.
Does the commissioner know how you see this issue?
I'm speaking about the law.
Okay.
The law stipulates the commissioner needs to make that decision. If you look, and I'm not prejudging, and I'm not predicting, I'm just saying something about what he has done already. This is the guy who created neighborhood policing. And I think deeply is trying to achieve a city where there's an entirely different relationship between police and community. But it's still a trial with facts, and in the end, he's got to make a decision based on what that judge gives him.
Okay.
Mayor DeBlasio, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your information. Now, these blackouts.
Yes, sir.
We're not going to see more of them.
I don't think so, but I will tell you, I don't understand what happened the other day. We still don't understand.
Have we made sufficient improvements to our old electrical systems?
In the last
So,
week?
look, again, I'm going to...
No, I mean, I don't know, how long have we been monitoring and changing and upgrading?
So the one thing I deeply appreciate about this show, I'm not blowing smoke, is that you allow a serious dialogue where people actually can get some deeper information. So here's the truth. For 13 years, we didn't have a blackout. That should tell New Yorkers something good. Okay. The bad part is, why on earth did it happen the other night? We only have a partial answer from Con Ed, which is very frustrating to me and everybody else. They're saying, trust us, but they can't give us an answer. But I want to believe that the underlying truth, that there's lots of capacity, lots of redundancy. I want to believe that is true. We're all feeling a little jaded right now. Yes, it came back in 5 hours, and that should not be forgotten. That is a good thing. But we're all feeling kind of jaded and worried right now. The proof will be in these next days. But we got to get everybody ready to protect themselves while we make sure that Con Ed does their job. It's really important that people understand everyone's got to look out for each other, and New Yorkers do that really well. If there's someone elderly or sick who's got a challenge, make sure they get what they need. If they need their meds, if they need water. But people have to be smart. This is going to be a very dangerous situation. People have to take it really slow, really carefully. But meantime, we're going to push Con Ed for answers. We're going to push Con Ed to perform. No one should be guaranteeing anything. But I do believe they have the capacity to get us through this.
And is there a scenario, once we get information, right? Because here you are trusting again, because you have trusted a lot of things. That's a reoccurring theme, even with the NYCHA thing. You hired people to do jobs. They gave bad information. We're trusting that Jimmy O'Neill.
I'm not sure. I want to be careful. I think these are all very different situations. In the case
very
of NYCHA,
different, but you trusted
in the case
people.
of NYCHA, some people just plain lied. And you don't know they're lying when they're lying. It's not about trusting them. These are people who worked at NYCHA for decades.
Con Ed could be lying to us.
Of
is
course
my
they
point.
could be. Of
Because
course.
you're saying they're not giving us the full story. They could be blowing smoke up all our asses. When the real answer is, turn off the lights at Times Square. The system's stressed out. It's 100 and some degrees outside, and the wires are old. Turn some stuff off for a few hours.
If we've got to turn a whole lot of stuff off, I'm gonna say that instantly if it comes to that. But look, again, respectfully, be careful not to put a whole bunch of different situations into one pot. I fundamentally believe that if we go 13 years without a blackout and the one we had got resolved in 5 hours, those are good things. Mm-hmm. What I don't like one bit is why we don't have a clear answer what happened and how it can be avoided again.
Listen, man, I'm just pissed, man. Let's just be honest. Yeah, I'm pissed.
I respect that.
You're sort of taking it out in one place, but
the mayor's here. How often you get to sit down with the boss? When you get your time to sit down with the boss?
I'm not saying I don't understand. I think
you're
I think the mayor understands.
Go off, man. Go off.
And I think you're stressing some points that need to be stressed.
But you are always honest about it, and you're always speaking from the heart. And I know you're also speaking to try and change the world. I know that's who you are. And I think this is the kind of dialogue. This is what we should do in the whole country. Is like there's a lot of pain. I mean, and we've talked about policing and we've talked about structural racism, but there's pain. There's so many people struggling to make ends meet. There's a tremendous sense of insecurity. There's a tremendous sense of people being let down.
And the calming voice at the top doesn't exist.
Of course not.
Trump,
of course not.
Yeah, you feel calm when he tweets? Does he make you feel comfortable? He makes you feel like...
But Ebro, let me offer, maybe we have to get by the notion of the calming voice. Maybe we got to understand it's about us.
I love that.
And in the end, I came from, earlier in my life, there was a time when I think there was more trust in authority, and that got broken down by Vietnam, Watergate, so many things. And now with Trump, we've never seen anything like this, and it's impossible to feel the respect that we want to feel for someone in the White House, right, with this guy. But maybe the bigger lesson is
I love that you called the president this guy.
Right.
But the mayor of New York City just called the president this guy.
Well, that's all it gets. But I think maybe the idea is we all are going to have to build a different society. And this is a place where an actual dialogue is happening. And it doesn't have to be, sweetness and light. There could be blunt, there can be real talk, there could be disagreements, but people should work it through because most people want to. One of the things I'm learning in my presidential campaign, talking to people all over America, we're not as divided as we're told.
No, we're more alike.
We're more alike than people realize. We're probably more alike as a country than we've ever been in our history, where people are watching the same things, listening to the same things, have a lot of the same cultural reference points.
People forget that Trump and Bernie were really saying the same things. Trump and Bernie were going out saying the same things about not trusting the establishment, not trusting corporations, not trusting... Trump was lying.
Right,
Trump was lying, and he was
Trump was lying.
One was telling the truth, one was lying.
But I'm just saying they were saying the same thing.
There's no question.
Right, it does speak to the fact that the people hearing it weren't that different, which is why, if it doesn't work out for your campaign, we have talked about that we like the idea of Bernie Sanders this time around because of what he can say to people in Middle America, because I think he does speak a lot of people's languages.
No, I respect him greatly, but I want to say one of the things Bernie says, and he said last time to his great credit, is stop thinking it's just going to be the leader who will solve your problems. It is going to have to be a people's movement. It's going to have to be a very different dialogue. So I'm kind of giving it back to you guys in a good way and saying you are actually here having a real American dialogue that would be the kind we would want for the whole country, where people can have it out but with a real atmosphere of respect, but real, really trying to get to what is happening. In a funny way, as painful as this era has been, it has also empowered a lot of people. We've got more people active in their communities than ever. We've got more people running for office than ever, more people voting than ever. Trump unleashed this horrendous white nationalism. He unleashed the forces of hate. And I said it the other day, he said he wanted to make America great again. What he's doing is to make America hate again. That is true. That is what he's doing. But the counter-revolution has happened too, where people are now owning their society in a profoundly different way. The only way we're going to further that is to say, yeah, vote, yes, you want better leaders, but we have to change. We can't depend on leaders as a general rule because they've let us down too many times. We have to do it. We have to do it, and we have to have that sense of ownership, and we have to have that sense of keeping everyone accountable. And our democracy kind of atrophied for a long time. Like people just checked out. You could see it. The voting went down, participation went down. Everyone's like, oh, they're all alike. When you say, oh, they're all alike, those in power laugh all the way to the bank. When you say they're all alike, the 1% is very, very happy. Wall Street's very happy. Big corporations are very happy when the people check out. The people are checking back in. And what you guys have is an opportunity, I think there are other venues like this, to engage people and say, never put your blind faith in a leader again. It's fight on each issue, fight for each change. And I can tell you change can happen because with all the valid critiques you're raising and concerns you're raising, you know as well as I do, last 5 years, some things have changed. It shows change can happen.
We've made some incremental progress.
Change can happen.
It's just, those few steps forward, more steps backward, that fear.
I know that feeling, but it's not the truth. More change is happening than the steps backward. And we've got to be clear about that. We've got to be clear every time real change happens. And I think generationally, never seen a more focused, purposeful, aggressive, activist generation than the one coming up. It gives me tremendous faith. And I don't think for a moment we're stuck in place. I don't think we have to be stuck in place. So when your heart is telling you you're angry or you're cynical, I understand where it comes from, and it's a valid place to say the least. But I don't buy that we're one step forward, two steps back. I actually think there are some areas where we're clearly moving forward. And this city, we got some things to show. Every kid is going to pre-K for free. That is a different world. If we had that in this whole country, we would be a different country, period. So it can happen.
Mayor DeBlasio is his name. So where do you go? What happens? Do you go to your office here? Do you get back on an airplane and fly to...
No, you mean with this stuff happening here?
I'm asking. I don't
know.
know.
I'm staying here until we get through this heat thing, which sounds like all the way Sunday, maybe later. I'm not sure yet. But whatever it takes, this is... Look, they didn't send a memo saying there's going to be a blackout on Saturday night.
It wasn't unusually hot, right? It just
it was a nice day.
That was the day we were hanging out.
It's unusually hot this
weekend's
right, but
unusual.
I'm saying the difference here that what I or any leader has to be clear about is if something happens no one saw coming, you got to then react and make sure everyone's in place and make sure everyone's doing their job. And they did, to the credit. And the first responders did an absolutely amazing job. Everyone did what they're supposed to do, no injuries. But when you know something's coming, and this is a mistake some mayors have made in the past, the warning sign's there and they ignore it. We all can see the warning sign. From now to Sunday, extraordinary heat. We've got to get ready to deal with anything and everything. I'm going to be here the whole time.
Well, we appreciate your dialogue today.
Thank you.
And we're going to be having more of this. Hopefully, it gets the result that I want to see. And I realize because this is a legal case, you're making sure that you reemphasize that there's no prejudice and you're going through the process. And I get all of that. But just as people who all live in this community, the expectation in August is that Officer Pantaleo is fired. We've seen officers get fired before. I believe under Giuliani, somebody got under the Baez chokehold.
There was the whole trial and everything, and that's where it led.
And someone ended up getting fired.
Yep. So it was after this process. It was
absolutely. They went. You can't not have this process. It's law. It's the union contract. You have to have due process.
So and I don't know if the audience knows that there is a precedent for the mayor of New York City.
No, I'm saying that was the trial and the police commissioner deciding.
No. But the commissioner decided that.
It's the same exact process. And I want people to understand. I understand there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of hurt. But let's get real. First of all, due process rights, this is an American thing. The minute you take away due process from one person, watch out for yourself. Everyone deserves due process. Everyone would want it for themselves to be done right. Second, No, you cannot remove someone without a trial, and the police commissioner
that.
ultimately decides. Those are union rules.
But in that
that's
Giuliani,
state law.
under Giuliani, that was the
It was
commissioner.
the police commissioner.
Got it.
Got it. And that's where it ended up.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see in August.
Thank you for your information. Thank you for all the information, and thank you for your
Thank
time.
you for the dialogue.
Mayor DeBlasio,
Mayor.
give it up one time, man. Hot 97.